SubTools are an organizational system inside of ZBrush that allow you to isolate separate parts when you have multiple meshes making up your model. Think of SubTools a bit like Photoshop layers, in that it allows you to keep things separated from one another so that you can work on them individually. In addition, SubTools can be organized in folders to have even more organizational freedom for complex, large models. So here I have a sketch of a goblin head, and we're going to add eyes to this by using SubTools. The Subtool palette is located in the Tool menu, and it's this first palette right here. On here, you're going to see a list of subtools in your tool, and you can change the visibility count by using this slider up here. We can name tools, change their resolution, copy and paste them, duplicate them, delete them, and append or insert. Append and insert are what we're going to start with here. So let's say we want to add eyes to this. The first way I'm going to show you how to do this is to simply append a primitive to your scene. So we're going to come up here to append, and then we're going to select Sphere 3D. A sphere has been added to our subtool list. When you do this, ZBrush will automatically convert the primitive into a polymesh 3D so that it can be sculpted on. Currently, it is not active. The current active subtool is the one that is lighter in color. By default, inactive subtools are dimmed in ZBrush, making them darker unless there is polypaint applied to them. So in order to select this sphere, we can simply come over and tap on the name. Alternatively, you can also simply Alt and tap on an inactive subtool on your canvas to select it. And you'll notice that when I did that, my goblin sketch disappeared. That's because the eyeball icon for this sketch is currently off. If I want to be able to see my other subtools, I need to have the eyeball turned on. And now you can see that it's inside there. I can also turn on transparency, located on the right shelf, if I want to be able to see through my current subtool to other subtools that may be hidden partially from the active one. Now what I'm going to do is position this subtool using the gizmo, which is activated up here using the move, scale, and rotate buttons. Generally speaking, you're just going to activate it by clicking on the move button, or easier still is to hit the W key. This is going to turn on our gizmo, and from here we can scale this down. You'll see now that this is inside of my goblin sketch, but we have transparency on so we can still see it. If I turn transparency off, you'll see that it disappears. It's still in there, but we can't see it. Sometimes when you add a subtool to your model that is small, you may not be able to see it because it's nested inside of another subtool. So let's turn on transparency again. And then I'm going to move using the gizmo here and find, we'll zoom in, and we're going to find a place and scale for this eye. Now at this point, I'm going to turn off my transparency so I can see this a little bit better. So now we have an eyeball for our goblin, but we want to have a symmetrical one on the other side. We're going to be covering this more in the next video, but for now, just know that if you go down to the Geometry subpalette, to modify topology, there is this Mirror and Weld button here. When we click this, it's going to mirror this eye from one side to the opposite side on the X symmetry. Because you can only work on one subtool at a time, this allows me to have the eyes isolated so that I can work on these lids without worrying about destroying the spherical form of the eyeballs. So let's say for some reason we want to give this goblin a set of horns. Instead of going to append this time, I'm actually going to click insert. this is going to do the same thing as append, except that instead of placing it at the bottom of our subtool list, which is what append would do, insert will place it below the active subtool. So I'm going to click insert, and I've already got a horn loaded into ZBrush here. I can simply click that. When you insert, it actually activates that subtool automatically. So I'm going to come in with my gizmo, move this into place, and we'll say that I'm happy with that. So I'll go ahead and go down again to Geometry, Modify Topology, and click Mirror and Weld. I can also copy and paste tools into our subtool list. So here I have two other goblin sketches. I'm simply going to go to my subtool list and click Copy, go back to my original one, and click on Paste. And when I do that, it's going to place it directly under the selected subtool. So I'll go back to this other sketch, click Copy, go back to my original, and click Paste. Now I'm seeing these overlaid on top of one another, and that doesn't look real good. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the eyeballs on the other two heads. No matter if the eyeball is on or off, if your subtool is active, if it's the selected subtool, it's going to be visible. So even though Goblin Head 3 is currently off in visibility, it's active, so it's going to be visible. If I click on Goblin Head 4 at the top here, now Goblin Head 3 gets hidden. So let's say I want to add a pair of horns to one of the other Goblin Heads. I'll select it by clicking on the name. And then I don't want to see the other one overlaid on top of it, so I just have to turn off the eyeballs on Goblin Head 4 here, as well as the horns, because we're going to put different horns on. Turns out that the eyes seem to actually work pretty well for Goblin Head 3. It actually works pretty well for Goblin Head 4 as well, so we have one set of eyeballs for all three, which is kind of nice. But we're going to select Goblin Head 3, and then go to Insert, and select the next pair of horns. Now when I do that, Insert automatically activates the new subtool. Append does not. So because I had the visibility off on Goblin Head 3, when it was selected, it's now invisible. So now all I have to do is turn on that eyeball and I can see it there. I'm going to hit W to turn on my gizmo. We're going to cover gizmo in the next chapter, so don't worry too much about this, though it's not too different from any other 3D software if you happen to know that. And we'll go back to Geometry, Modify Topology, and click Mirror and Weld. So you may need to merge subtools together sometimes in order to be able to work on them at the same time. If you want to do that, the easiest way is to simply have the subtools you wish to merge together located one on top of the other. Then select the top one and go down to Subtool and this Merge subpalette and click Merge Down. And that's going to merge the selected top subtool with the one directly below it. Click that. It'll say that this is not an undoable operation. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And now we can see that our two different subtools, the antlers and Goblin Head 3, have been merged into a single subtool. So I could come in here, turn off X symmetry, select Damien Standard, and say I want to put in some scarring, like maybe got into some kind of a fight and took a claw to the head here. You'll also run into the situation where you'll have multiple parts in a single subtool and you want to split them so that you can work on them individually. To do that, we can go down to the Split subpalette here, and there's multiple different ways we can split our parts into other subtools. In this case, we have two similar parts, they're simply mirrored, and one dissimilar part. I could click this Split to Parts, and what that would do is it would actually split any unconnected parts into their own subtool. If I click this split to similar parts, then it's going to look at the poly counts of all of the individual pieces and group together the ones that have the same or close to the same poly counts. Group split is going to split things based on the polygroups, and the split unmasked points and split masked points are going to split things based on masking. For this situation, I think split to similar parts is going to be the best one for me. So I'm going to click that, and again, it's going to tell me this is not an undoable operation. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now we can see that we've got our antlers as one subtool and our goblin head as another. If I want to rearrange these, I can simply drag one up above the other, and now we have the goblin head on top and the antlers underneath. If I wish to change the names so that I'm better organized, it's very easy to do. All you do is select the subtool and then click on this rename button. We can then rename this and hit enter. Let's take a look at some of the other merge functions down here. So we covered merge down. We also have merge similar and merge visible. These are going to do a couple of different things here. We're going to start off by going up to our horns here. They're the active subtool, and we're going to do a split to parts. That's going to put each one of these horns into a separate subtool. With our subtools that are visible, if I go down to merge and I do merge visible and I click this, what you're going to see that's happened now is that instead of adding something to our current subtool list, what we've got is a new tool that is made of all of the visible subtools from our original model here, and it's put them all into a single subtool and named it merged and then PM3D, which was the active subtool name when we clicked this. If I had Goblin Head 4 selected and I had clicked merge visible, now the new file is named merged_Goblin Head 4, and everything is in the same subtool. If I show my polyframes here, I still have my groups. I can still isolate things, and the parts are still separate from each other. They haven't been welded together in Dynamesh or anything like that. And so I could still come in here and do a split and do a split to parts or a group split. I'm going to actually say no to that one because group split in this case is actually going to split all my separate polygroups. And you can see that my horns are actually made up of multiple polygroups here. So I don't want to do that. So what I want to do is I want to do a split to similar parts. When I click that, hit OK, it's managed to keep the eyes as a single subtool and the horns as a single subtool. Let's go back to our other mesh and let's increase this visible count here a little bit. Another merge that we can do with this is merge similar. So I've got my two horns here that are separated from one another. And I'm going to go ahead and click this merge similar subtools. When I do that, again, it's not an undoable operation. I'll click OK, and it's going to merge those subtools together. They have to be visible on the canvas for this to work. And this doesn't add it to the tool menu. It simply collapses these into a single subtool. So let's say I've added something to my scene that I don't actually want in there. So I'll just go ahead and accidentally click on this Polymesh 3D. If I want to get rid of this, all I have to do is have it active and then come down to the delete. When I click this, it's going to say that you can't undo this. I'm going to select OK, and now it's gone. You can also select a subtool and click this delete other. That's going to delete all of the other subtools besides the one that you have selected. You also have delete all, which is going to get rid of all of the subtools in this subtool list. You would use this if, say, you had a model in here. So let's say I've got this model here, and I no longer want it taking up my tool list, because when you save a Z project file, it's going to save every tool in this list. So if you have some in here that you no longer want, the easiest way to get rid of it is to go and select it on the tool menu, and then click delete all and click OK, and now it's no longer in your project. The last thing we'll do in this chapter is talk about creating folders for our subtools. There's several ways to do this, but we're just going to do the simplest way for now, since some of the others require some knowledge that we haven't gone over yet. So in this case, I want to group together these horns, this head, and these eyes into a single folder that I can easily see or turn off if I want. So what I'm going to do here is simply go over to the new folder with one of them active. Click that, and we'll just call this Goblin Head 4. Click that. The selected subtool is inside that folder already. All I have to do now is simply click and drag up until we see this highlight underneath the first subtool and drop it in. You can see that this is now linked into that folder, and we'll do the same thing for the eyes. I can just drag and drop these anywhere I want. If I drag too far down, it's going to take it out of the folder. So I'm going to put it back in there. And if I click on the folder, I can collapse it. I can also turn that off if I want. That's going to turn off all of the eyeballs in the scene, except that if we have an active one, like in this case, we have the Goblin Head active. If I turn this eyeball off on this folder, we still see the active subtool. You don't have the full folder active at any time. You only have a subtool inside that folder active. However, if I turn this off and I click on a different subtool outside of the folder, then I can easily turn this off and on. Next to the eyeball on the folder is this gear icon, which gives us a bunch of different things that we can do to the entire folder, such as rename it, transpose it, which means to use the gizmo on all of the objects inside of it. We can duplicate the folder. We can merge it. We can show or hide the poly paint on everything inside the folder. We can do Boolean operations. We can merge them all together, or we can delete the folder entirely. Saving out our Z tool. Subtools will be saved out whether you select File, Save As to save a ZPR file, or whether you go to the tool menu and select Save As here to save as a ZTL file. Subtools don't save out if you're exporting it as an OBJ. These little arrows here underneath our subtool list, the straight arrows simply go up and down the selected subtools, which you can also do simply by hitting the up and down arrows on your keyboard. The bent arrows actually move these subtools up and down depending on which one you're clicking. If I hold Shift and click one, it's going to drop it either all the way to the bottom or bring it all the way up to the top. This has pretty much been replaced by the drag and drop ability, which is something that previous versions of ZBrush, I think after 2018, didn't have access to. You would have to either use the arrow keys or these buttons here. All right, there's more to go over in subtools, but we're going to save some of it for later chapters.